I'll be so lonely I could die.
35 years ago today, the king of rock and roll left us. Elvis Presley passed away on the throne in Graceland, the king of rock and roll at the age of 42. Too young to be leaving this world. He had a lot of great music, I'm sure, left in him. To mark the occasion, we thought we'd go to our Elvis expert, the lady that's written at least 3 Elvis books that I know of, like A Baby's Let's Play House, Elvis Presley on the Women Who Loved Him. That's her latest from just a couple of years ago. Also, The Colonel, The Extraordinary Story of Colonel Tom Parker and Elvis Presley, and Elvis Aaron Presley, Revelations from the Memphis Mafia. We'd like to say hello to our good friend from Kentucky, Alanna Nash. Hey, Alanna, how are you?
Good morning. So nice to be with you.
Well, it's so nice to be with you, too, even on such a solemn but joyous occasion. I guess on the anniversary of Elvis's death, the 35th anniversary, we celebrate his life and all the music and memories and films that he gave us over the years.
You know, just hearing those opening strains of Heartbreak Hotel, they're still electrifying, aren't they? You know, it just gives you really a thrill to hear that music. And I guess that's why we're still celebrating the life and artistry of Elvis Presley.
Is the fan base still strong?
You know, Sheree, it is. And I think the estate was really worried about 10, 15 years ago that as Elvis's contemporaries aged, people wouldn't want to pay their money and come to go through Graceland. But just the opposite has happened. Even though the economy is down, thousands and thousands of people swarm in there every year, you know, mostly from other countries, mostly from Europe, really. But people just cannot get enough of Elvis Presley.
And you were a big Elvis fan growing up, huh, Alanna?
Oh, I was I can still remember being just barely 6 years old and sitting down in front of the television to see Ed Sullivan, to see him, and being mesmerized. And it hasn't waned very much since then.
A little while ago, Sheree and I were talking about what we were doing when we heard the news of Elvis's death. What about you?
Well, weirdly enough, he died on my birthday, so today is my birthday.
Well, happy birthday, Alanna.
Well, thank you. And I was in the car with my sister. We were going to the store to pick up some ingredients for a special Chinese dinner. I had a new boyfriend, and I was fixing dinner for him, and we heard it on the radio, and, you know, we're so stunned, like everybody. And I remember we went home, and we hated to tell our mother because she was such a big Elvis fan, and I can still remember being about 7 years old, and my mother saying, you know, when that boy's voice matures, he's going to be a great singer. And I remember laughing and thinking, oh, Mother, you know, he's for teenagers and kids. I mean, how could you even think of such a thing? Of course, she was completely prescient and right.
Well, let's talk about one of the things that you were, I guess, fortunate to do. You were a journalist at the time, and you got a chance to be the first journalist to see Elvis's body. And there was a little controversy about that came out of that because of the way that Elvis looked.
You know, it's true. And it was just kind of a fluke that John Filiatro and I were working for the Courier-Journal, the Louisville paper, and Elvis had a connection to Louisville. His paternal grandfather had lived there for many years and was buried there. And the paper sent me out to interview his widow, and then the next day put John and me on the company plane to go down and cover that. And we just happened to be standing at the edge of the press pool, and Dick Grobe, head of security, came out with a bullhorn, actually, and said members of the press who wished to go view the remains line up behind these two. So that's how we went in. But so when I came out, you know, there was a long line, and people said to me, well, what does it look like? What does he look like? And I said, well, you know, gosh, it doesn't really look like him. And I think for two reasons. One, you know, this is kind of an indelicate thing to discuss, but he looked very waxy because the funeral home had to do a number of kind of Herculean things to
because of the way that he died and that he was on his face for a long time, and after they had
discoloration. Yes. And the other thing is that he was dressed, I don't know if I expected him to be in a jumpsuit, but he had on a white business suit, which had been a Christmas present from his father, I learned later, and a light blue dress shirt and a long silver tie.
That does not sound very Elvis-like.
It doesn't, does it, Jerry? And I guess it was, and you had to go through there very, very quickly. He was placed in the, right as you go into the door there, right at the bottom of the stairs, for the press viewing, or rather for the public viewing, because they let in, you know, thousands of fans after the press. So you could get quite close to him, but you could not stop. So you had to take a really quick glance. And when I came out, I thought, well, maybe this is a hoax. Maybe his career was not doing so well at that time, and
he faked his death.
I thought, well, maybe this is a great Colonel Parker hoax, because Colonel Parker, of course, was you couldn't put anything past him. He'd come out of the carnivals. So I sneaked back in to look at again, and then I really was confused, and I tried to go through a third time, and they yanked me out. They said, no, you've already been through twice. You can't go through again. So I could see where people might have thought that, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories, but no, unfortunately, he's gone, and he's been gone since that time.
Hey, if I were gone, and I was faking it, I would not want the report of how I died published.
Yes.
Yeah,
because that was very, very undignified.
Yeah, you would have died, saving some child in a burning building or something, something heroic,
The other thing is that he was such a performer, he could not have stood to be off the stage all these years. No, so unfortunately, he's gone. But, I still get emails and letters from people who claim that they've had his baby and he's still around, and et cetera, et cetera. So
my mother thought she had an Elvis encounter.
Well, let's hear it.
This a few years ago. I mean, this goes back to probably about 3 years after his death. My mother doesn't drive. She's always ridden a bike and does very well at it. She's 80 or 81 now.
How great.
And anyway, she went up to at the time, like a Woolco or a Zayre type department store. And she was locking up her bike. It was early in the morning. And she said some guy on a moped kind of drove by and just stopped as she was locking up her bike and just said, "Hi, how you doing? Nice day, isn't it?" And she just kind of looked up like, who are, and then she said, "Yeah, it's a nice day. Have a good day." And he just drove off. And she swears, she says, I know he's probably dead, but I think I had one of those encounters that you read about. And I said, "Mom, on a moped?" He said, "Yeah, but he made a point of stopping and saying, 'Have a nice day.'" And so that was all she needed. So she kind of has it. And she's been an Elvis fan since, the first 45 came out.
That's fabulous. Well, he did like motorcycles, so maybe he downgraded to a moped.
Well, he wouldn't have had to get a driver's license to drive one.
That's right.
There you go. So
No
he would have been able to
insurance.
protect his identity. Well, I thought he was up at a Burger King in Ypsilanti, Michigan. That's what I heard, the last time that anybody saw Elvis. But
it's funny how people come out with that stuff.
With as many Elvis impersonators that there are in the world, I'm surprised that more Elvis sightings have not come out. But Elvis Presley was a great entertainer and a true legend. There's been nobody like him since, right?
I don't think anybody will ever eclipse him. I mean, just the times were such. I mean, I always say to people, if you weren't alive in 1956 when he burst on the national scene, you can't imagine the impact he had and first of all, how strange he looked, how different he sounded, and just that, he is the guy. I mean, James Dean sort of paved the way, but James Dean was killed in 1955, September 30th, 1955, and Elvis Presley was the guy who gave teenagers their own culture. With the help of Colonel Parker, of course. So you can't imagine how he changed the world. I mean, truly the entire world, in the way people look, the way they talk, the way they dress.
And it was also the time in which he made the scene. It was the 50s where it was, post-World War II, and there was a certain feeling in the country. And all of a sudden, this guy comes out. Yes, it was conservative, and then you had, talk of race bubble up and things of that nature. So I really think these times will never come again.
No one can have that kind of impact to literally change the world. Mm-hmm. And those wonderful Al Wertheimer's photographs of Elvis in 1956. The young girls who come to the concerts have on white gloves. I mean, and often hats.
Yes, those times will never come again.
No. And he was so open and free and easy, even his style of dress, those oversized clothes instead of the way everybody was so buttoned down. No, it just can't have the same impact.
Let's talk about the last days of his life, Alanna. How did Elvis, a guy who had everything, a tremendous career, a tremendous following, sold-out concerts wherever he went, how did he end up the way that he ended up? And I'm talking about the drugs and some of the other things that some boys from the Memphis Mafia wrote about in the book that came out a couple of weeks before Elvis passed away. That's a great read. That, matter of fact, Geraldo was talking about it on our station yesterday. He said when that book came out, he was so mad at those guys for saying these horrible things about an American icon like Elvis. And then he did a little research and found out that what they said were true about Dr. Nick, all the drugs that Elvis was taking.
All the enabling.
Yes, Elvis, What Happened? That was the name of that book. Well, I think a couple of things. One is that Colonel Parker insisted that he be insulated from the rest of the world, and that is a killer in itself. And remind me to tell you a little bit of a conversation I had with Lisa Marie in May about this same topic about herself. But so you can't live that kind of world. You can't reverse day for night and be healthy. You can't live cut off from almost everybody in the universe except a very small clutch of people around you and be healthy. And you can't live a kind of punishing schedule of Las Vegas shows 7 days a week, often 2 shows a day. And then when you're not in Vegas, be out doing one-nighters around the country where you have to be up for the shows, and then you have to be down to rest, and then back up for the shows. You cannot do this. That will kill anybody.
Elvis was Colonel Parker's trained bear.
Absolutely right, Sheree. So it'll get you in the end. I mean, he hadn't had anybody to tell him that because nobody had been doing it. He was the first performer to play 7 days in Vegas. No one else, had the gall to try to do that, or no manager had the gall to try to press his client into doing such a thing. And Elvis wanted to please. He wasn't someone to say, no, I won't do that. I always say that he didn't have an emotional backbone, and part of it is his father, who also, was always had his fist in the back of Elvis's shoulders to push him forward and do whatever the colonel wanted. The colonel needed money. He had a terrible gambling problem. It's absolutely a tragedy. So I don't see how a person could have ended up any other way, really, than the way he did.
Wow.
All right, let's talk about his daughter. You brought her up. What's Lisa Marie up to? I saw on USA Today Weekend, I saw the top 10 questions for Lisa Marie and Alanna Nash's name on the byline. So what's his daughter like, and what's her perspective from 35 years later?
Well, I really enjoyed interviewing her. She was totally delightful. When she first came out in 2003 with her first album and second album in 2005, she was very jittery. She was kind of profane and kind of an embarrassment, I think, to a lot of the fans. Well, she's very, very different now at 44. She's a mother of 4, has young twins, much warmer, a lot less angry. One of the things she talked about, the USA Weekend piece is 10 surprising things you didn't know about Lisa Marie, but, those are very short bursts. But one of the things she talked about that couldn't make the article was that she felt she's moved to England. She's very happy in England. She's been there a couple of years now. And she talked about I asked her why she moved, and she said she needed to get away from the life that she was living, that, again, she was so insulated and cut off. And, it was very strange to hear these words from a person who looks exactly like Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was his story. But thank God she did see the light, and there she was. She moved at the same age her father died, if you look back. She moved in 2010. And she was really spooked by that 42nd birthday coming. So I really salute her for turning her life around and making sure she didn't end up like her dad.
It's hard to believe Lisa Marie's 42. Well, she's older than that now.
44 now.
44.
44, yeah, exactly. Alanna Nash, you have been a real treat to talk to, as always.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sherry, I love visiting with you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Any other Elvis news happens, you'll be our go-to person, okay?
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
That's Alanna Nash. Look her up on the internet. Get one of her great books. She's not only written about Elvis, but she's got a great biography on Dolly Parton, and Golden Girl, the story of Jessica Savage.
I read that. That is fantastic.
That's who we just talked to, Alanna Nash.
I didn't realize that.
Yep, that's right.
Great book.
Yeah. And check out that list on USA Today's website. It's at 9 o'clock at the Big Talker. WTMA Charleston.